Hey everyone, welcome to The Other Side of Addiction. I am your host, Al Richards, and we have a very, very special guest with us today. It is Robert Scott Bell. Robert, thank you so much for being with us.
Al, it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, just, I had the honor of being on Robert's show, about a month or so ago. And I'm just going to say right now, thank you, Laban, for introducing us. Laban's just
Our buddy Laban
fabulous,
Ditchburn, yes.
fabulous dude.
Yeah, the world's best courage coach.
The world's best courage coach. Yeah, I love that man. And I love his wife, too, Anna.
Yeah,
she
Anna's
is just an amazing lady. So, yeah, thank you guys for introducing us.
Well, we had a good time on my show with you. It was a powerful interview, I thought. Yeah. So if anybody didn't catch it yet, I hope you share it because you'll see a lot of the other side of Al.
Yeah, yeah. I got a little intense a couple times, which is kind of unusual. I need to do that more in my talks. I need to get that intense when I do my speaking events because I've been told it comes out a lot better when I've really got that force. So, But yeah, thank you again for taking time to be here. Greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, glad to be with you guys. And the conversations that need to happen are happening here.
Yeah,
right.
Well, and same on your show, definitely. And we've got the lovely Mel Hobbs, with us today.
Hello.
So, Mel, thank you for joining us again.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely. It's always a pleasure to have you in here, and I know you enjoy it too, right? Yeah, Therapy Thursdays for both of us, huh?
That's right.
I've come on the right day then, huh?
Yeah. One of my buddies who was a guest co-host on the show, we were talking about how therapeutic it is because I get to sit down with so many incredible people. And I get to learn a lot more about addiction because I'm on the other side of addiction. It helps me understand a little bit more. Will I understand it completely? No, because I've not walked in those shoes. But to get a little bit more of an understanding, and I tell you what, the people that we get an opportunity to sit down with are some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. You know, they've dug themselves out of some pretty nasty places. And they've come out on top, and to see what they're doing in life right now is amazing.
Just really using it to help others is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really cool. So, especially like with Clay that we had on the show a couple of weeks ago. My gosh, his life was full of addiction and doing things that he shouldn't have been doing, and treating people the way he shouldn't be treating people. And now, recovery and helping others is his new drug. He just gets a freaking high off of it, and I think that is just amazing.
Do you think that, when we uncover addiction, I know everybody's path is different. You talk about walking in people's shoes, but isn't it a search for meaning? I mean, in some sense, looking for something to fill a void.
Yeah.
And whether we use something that destroys us or something that uplifts us and others, again, that's the path, that's the journey. Perhaps understanding our vulnerabilities as to why some people walk down that road of addiction in a destructive sense versus those that choose something that fulfills their life, that is healing and uplifting to themselves and others. This journey is, again, quite unique. And I know the stories are, not one is identical to the other. There are patterns that emerge over the time. But sometimes it can be a matter of a deficiency of, let's say, key minerals in the body that people don't look at. They look at it only as an emotional issue, for instance, even a spiritual issue, which I agree all of that is included. But sometimes it comes down to the basic physiology of the body. When something is missing, we interpret the body's cravings for things and misinterpret them. And sometimes we can correct it easily if we just look at that physiology, what's present, what's absent, what's there that shouldn't be there, what isn't there that should be there, and correcting that. And when I say that, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but I think that's often overlooked, particularly these addiction centers, where insurance is the dictator as far as how long you can go to these places. Very rarely do they address nutritional deficiencies. Yeah. Very rarely do they look at botanical substances of creation that can fulfill those gaps in even nutrition, but even from a medicinal perspective. So I think that's something I don't know if you've talked a lot about, but that's a big part of what I address.
No, and I would love to talk more about this because it's really sparked my interest with you saying that. It was in my mid-30s when I realized by changing different diets and different habits or different ways of thinking, how much that can literally change your life. And no, it doesn't happen overnight, just like most things don't. When I got into bodybuilding, I weighed 178 pounds, and it was like December 18th. and I had a competition set for March 10th. And I thought I was not big enough to place in lightweight. So I put in for lightweight and bantamweight. But to place for bantamweight, I had to come in at 154 pounds at weigh-in.
Whoa.
And so I'm like, all right. And I had a trainer. And he's like, okay, first things what we got to do is he goes, we'll keep your workout the same, but we're changing your diet. And I'm like, all right. So we start changing the diet. I was eating 5 times a day. And it was like chicken breasts and some egg whites and yams and different things. And when I first started the diet, I actually went to him like about the 5th or 6th day, and he's like, how's it going? I'm like, I'm sick of eating. I'm just tired of it, like every 2 to 3 hours. And he goes, give it a couple more days. You'll change your mind. And I'm thinking, yeah, I don't know, I don't think this guy's got his head up his rear, you know? Mm-hmm. Well, literally it was a couple days after that, I got to where I was finding myself, I would eat. And then within an hour after I ate, man, I was looking at the clock going, oh my gosh, how much longer do I have to go before I can eat again? Because I was starving. And to watch the transformation in my body in such a short time, I weighed in on March 10th at 154 pounds.
Wow.
Right on the money. I had lost some muscle mass because I depleted way too quickly. But man, was I flippin' ripped. I mean, you could see every stridation in my obliques and everything, and I'm just going, I had no clue this could change your body so quickly. And with you saying a lot of the recovery centers, they don't put the health part into that, I think that is a very, very good thing to touch on.
Yeah. Well, if we look at the standard American diet that we've existed with for decades now, it isn't focused on nutrient content as much as it is calorie counting, for instance. Mm-hmm. And if we look at the directions from USDA or any governmental organization, they've changed it over our lifetime. It used to be 4 food groups. You remember that? You're old enough. You're not old enough to remember 4 food groups. Mel, come on, be honest. You're young. Back then, it was pizza, hot dogs, Coca-Cola, and potato chips. See, you don't know. So I grew up on the junk food, the garbage, and then it started changing into a food pyramid.
That's right.
Remember the food pyramid?
It was the pyramid.
And then there was the myplate.gov. But if you look back at all of the recommendations, they were all based on who lobbied, who gave the most money to our different agencies to get a better placement on that list, so you would be recommended, and there more people would buy your stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't rooted in real sound science of nutrition. And so, growing up with chronic diseases, in my case, from the day I was born, I had gastrointestinal problems, and I had skin conditions, I had musculoskeletal inflammatory conditions, allergies. We were talking before we went on the air how you were having some reflux or something like that.
Yeah.
And I was on Tums and Rolaids back in the day. Every day after every meal, I felt horrible. Now, of course, they've got proton pump inhibiting drugs, which stop stomach acid production altogether, which creates a whole litany of other problems, even though you're like, oh, it feels great, I don't have that thing. But you're destroying your body's ability to assimilate minerals from the food, if there are any in there. So we've set up a disastrous scenario where we counteract the symptoms of the body that are trying to communicate to us, there's something wrong here, and we say, let's take our car to the mechanic, and the warning light on the engine says check engine, and the mechanic just pulls the bulb out and says all good. You're like, oh look, the light's gone, as if that really solved the problem.
Right.
And that's pretty much what like the drugs do, or the food does that we can do to satiate our appetite perhaps, but create more problems. Now, I couldn't go maybe an hour and a half between meals when I was younger. I was so hungry. And I was like, well, why is that? Is that normal? I don't know. That's just my normal. But it turns out I was massively hypoglycemic. Have you ever heard of hypoglycemia?
I haven't.
It's a precipitous drop in blood sugar, right? You're suddenly like, oh my gosh, I'm famished, or you'll have a headache, or you'll get very angry. You talk about hangry, that concept of hangriness. And you just are suddenly now your higher brain functions are not there. It's like now only sourcing to the primitive brain, lizard brain in you. It's like that says, all I care about is getting food, survival. And so you see a lot of violence associated with being hypoglycemic. People don't realize what's happening. Now, there's another aspect of hypoglycemia.
That's interesting.
I know.
That can result in addictive behaviors too, because you're craving something. You don't realize you're craving nutrients that are lacking, for instance, and you reach out for something that takes away that feeling. And oftentimes that can be alcohol or drugs, driving you in to fulfill something that is an abject nutrient or mineral deficiency. And when I talk about the very specific minerals particular to hypoglycemia, and that's the management of sugar or energy from the food we consume, we are lacking two key minerals, primarily chromium, secondarily vanadium. These are trace elements that have been ripped out of the food supply over the course of 100 years since we started refining food. And the alteration of how we grow food after World War II, when all the chemical munitions and bomb-making materials, nitrogens, were converted into fertilizers for the field. And they saw, wow, look at the food grow on nitrogen. It's amazing. And yet the food wasn't healthy, and so it was subject to pest infestation. So the pests started eating this food that looked amazing, and it grew faster than ever. And they said, oh my gosh, what can we do to kill the pests? And so they started developing toxic poisons, pesticides, to kill the pests, which made the food more toxic, destroyed what was in the soil, the microbiological life forms and earthworms that would create the bioavailability of minerals via breaking down the soil from rock to other things, to things the plants could actually absorb. And then if you ate the plants, or if you ate the animals that ate the plants, you would actually get those minerals too. Now it wasn't in the food, even though it looked like the same food. So we were tricked into believing, better living through chemistry of the 20th century was going to solve all our problems, when it only started new problems, devastating new problems. And so if we talk about chromium, abundant in a number of foods, whole grains, for instance. The highest content of chromium in any food on the planet is the sugar cane. Isn't that interesting? Chromium. Why would chromium be in something so sweet and sugary as the sugar cane, with a lot of other minerals? And if you think about it, I think God's intelligence is to be acknowledged and admired, not devastated and overwhelmed by man's arrogance. Okay, if there's a lot of sugar in something, and God puts a lot of chromium in that something, might there be a reason?
Yeah.
And then we find out, here, let's talk about it in terms of trucking, because I think that's really easy to understand. You have a semi-tractor trailer, and you fill it with stuff, and it gets to the loading dock, and let's say there are no dock workers there to unload. It's just the driver. He's like, well, how am I going to get all this stuff off the truck? And then somebody says, oh my gosh, that's really it's a semi-tractor trailer truck resistance. We're going to diagnose that as your disease. You have semi-trailer tractor truck resistance, because there's nobody there to pull the stuff off. So you're obviously resisting it. And in the same way, have you ever heard the term insulin resistance?
I have heard
You
that.
have heard insulin resistance?
I've heard that.
Well, insulin is like the semi-tractor trailer truck. It binds and carries the sugars through the blood to be delivered to the cells, either for utilization or for storage. So if you have insulin, it carries the sugar. Great. Now, what if it gets to the cell and there are no dock workers to offload the sugar? Guess what the doctors call that? Insulin resistance. Excuse me? You're not resisting insulin. You have nothing to offload the sugar from the insulin. So what is it that does that? The chromium molecule. The mineral chromium that is absent in the diet because they've ripped it out of the grains, for instance, right? You have whole grains very rarely. Now it's the white refined flours and the pretty things and the pastries and all that. So you rip out all the minerals and you leave just the pure sugar, the carbohydrates. Similarly, in terms of sugar, if we had pure natural sources of sugar and we didn't refine it, right? We talk about white refined sugar. That's like crack cocaine, or worse, for a body. It's addictive. It feeds instantaneously this like endorphin rush, like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. And yet it depletes even further the minerals that used to be there, God put there, that man said, you know what? If we can rip those minerals from the sugar, we can sell those minerals for massive profit to other industries. And we'll give the people what's left, which is poison now. And so in nature, when there is sugar or carbohydrates, it comes with minerals. The minerals are designed to help us deal with the sugars that are part of the process of digestion, metabolism, energy production, etc. And so, if you're an athlete, you remember the concept of carb loading.
Yeah.
You'd feed this because you'd have instant access to sugars, but people that didn't have the minerals to deal with that could end up in hypoglycemic plunges, or hyperglycemia, more of a diabetic situation where the insulin is just gone. They're not producing it, whatever, and now they can't even deliver it. And then you have excess sugars and you can end up in a coma and dead from high sugar content. But it's all about minerals and bringing the minerals in that have been ripped out of our food supply. And yet everything is displaced, and then they say, well, it's really a drug deficiency. So if you have hypoglycemia or diabetes, here's glucophage or metformin, or here's insulin from an animal we synthesized for you so you can do what you're designed by God to do. Never asking the question, how come you stop doing what you're supposed to be doing? Now, that's a type 2 diabetic situation. Type 2 diabetes is an abject deficiency of chromium and vanadium. And we can replenish that in food form sources. And I found that many people that have addictions, if it doesn't outright cure is a hard word to say, but reverse their addiction, it greatly reduces the stress that draws them into the addictive behaviors.
Yeah, that makes
by
sense.
By solving that mineral deficiency or mineral deficiencies. And then they can address other things that may be very real too, emotional, mental, spiritual patterns. But we've taken out one huge equation, the physical craving associated, and then the misdirection of that craving into addictive behaviors that are destructive, which can be with food, as well as alcohol and drugs, etc. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It seems so simple.
You've heard about the truth being simple. Now, applying it may be complicated for people, but it comes down to those basic things that we overlook. You're like, gee, wow, I could have had a V8. Remember those commercials?
Oh,
right?
yeah, I definitely remember
I
that.
actually had one this morning.
Oh, yeah. Well, now they make them organic, by the way. They have organic versions of that, thankfully. So you don't have the pesticide-laden vegetables as such. But overlooking that, and I overlooked it because I never knew it because I grew up in a pharmaceutical medical family. Yeah. So it wasn't part of my upbringing to know this. So I was like, oh, yeah, drug here. Take this drug, take this drug, take this shot, to have this surgery. And I went through all of that in the first 24 years of my life, 19 or so before I gave up on modern medicine, other than if you break an arm, you need it reset. It's good.
Yeah.
But in terms of management of addiction and these other chronic diseases, like going into addiction centers, maybe there's behavioral therapy, maybe there's things, but look at the food that they deliver. People are smoking cigarettes and drinking coffee, feeding, the deficiencies, not by, let's say, bringing the minerals in, but just like kind of hitting different pathways that sort of satiate it temporarily, but don't address underlying cause. And then we get into, the insurance industry dictating what you can do or can't do as far as addiction therapy, and the monopoly on the treatment of addiction in America is horrible. You go into these centers and most people come out and they end up having to go back in if they have the insurance to cover it. And one of my statements, and I don't know if I said this when we were on my show together, one of the most dangerous things you can have in America is really good medical insurance. You're like, what? Wait a second. Doesn't everybody want really good medical insurance? Well, think about what happens when you have it. They will poke and prod you, give you every test that they exist, they can bill your insurance company for, to show you have diseases that you don't have, to then prescribe drugs that you don't need, that give you 10 other diseases that you didn't have to begin with. Yeah. So this model is very profitable, but it is debasing of our human bodily integrity. And again, it treats us as if we all have drug deficiencies, including addiction is assessed as that. Here, take this drug, whether it be a methadone to get you off of some hard drug, heroin or something. And then we find out there are other botanicals and homeopathic remedies that are pulling people off of these hardcore addictions, whether it be heroin or opiate drugs that are approved by the FDA, opioids, like kratom. I don't know if you guys have ever talked about kratom.
No, we haven't, not on the show.
Oh my
and I'm
gosh.
just learning a little bit more about it,
I met back in Florida where I was before I came out west, people that were, veterans, military veterans suffering with PTSD, massive addiction issues. And I'm at this bar like I'm at Cheers, but there's no alcohol. There's just CBD from hemp and kratom. And these people are sipping on this stuff, and I'm talking to them like, yeah, I used to be addicted to heroin, they would tell me. And nothing worked. The addiction centers didn't work. I got on kratom, and I'm like, I'm off of heroin. I'm like, oh. And then another guy was telling me he was hooked on the opioid drugs. And I was like, well, what did you do to get off of it finally? Well, I'm doing kratom, for instance. And kratom does interact with the opioid receptors, but not in a way like the opiates do. Because if you take too much of, any kind of opiate, even the methadones of the world, you'll stop breathing. You're done. This doesn't have that negative interaction. It won't cause you to kind of stop breathing. It doesn't disrupt it, but it somehow feeds it in a way that kind of blocks the desire for these heavy, heavy medications. Now, guess what? Our government agencies don't want you to know this.
Well, of course they don't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the crap that's pissing me off. The more
Me
that I'm
too.
starting to learn more
For sure.
about this, and I was talking to a friend last week, Robert, and we were talking about FDA, and we were talking
Yeah.
about pharmaceutical and some other things. And now his theory, he goes, you may think I'm freaking weird. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to think. I mean, we all have our own opinions. And if you're studying this and you're researching it, and he goes, it's all a monopoly. So we have all these people who have a bubble over all of us.
Yeah.
And we were talking a little bit about the FDA, and I says, well, years ago, I gave up on the FDA. I'm like, I don't believe a damn thing these guys say.
If they approve it, run the other way.
Yeah, basically
Yeah.
is what they do.
Living
And
the Truman Show, but
now even that, my wife's battled the addiction, and we had Dave DeRocher on the show, which we talked a little bit before we started recording. And when he was asking me that question too, who decides how long they stay in recovery? Well, it's the insurance companies. Well, who in the insurance company knows what it takes to be recovered, basically. I mean, it's all about the frickin' money. And that's one of the things that's really, really pissing me off. And I've had some people say, money is the root of all evil. Well, no, only if it's used for evil. I mean,
Well, a
'cause
lust
there are
for
pe-
money, or the love of money, they say in
Yeah.
genuine. It's a matter of recognizing it as a tool as opposed to the thing that obsesses you.
Exactly.
And-
yeah.
Yet the money that we seek, ironically, is devoid of the vitamins, minerals, and trace minerals I talk about in terms of the food we eat.
Yeah.
Right? Federal Reserve notes, not backed by anything, not tied to gold or silver. And yet there was a time in our history when it was, if you had a $1 note, it was actually redeemable for an ounce of silver. And a $20 bill was equivalent of a $20 1-ounce gold piece, which is now $50. But the point I'm making here in terms of deficiencies, we see them across the board, not just physiologically, but economically. Feeding addiction, starving us of real value.
Yeah.
And so as they
that's
print
where I
more,
go into the school system too.
yeah. And as far as, our desire to make money so we can do good things, we have to work harder and harder. And we get these things called Federal Reserve notes that buy less and less and less because they print more and more and more without any restriction. And so we end up enslaved to a debt cycle that can never be repaid, and yet drive us further into things like addiction because we feel like we can't ever get ahead.
Yeah.
And so that emotional weakness or other things is plied, and made even more overwhelming to us because we seemingly, I'm trying to do good and nothing I do gets me there. And all of that system is rigged to, again, disempower us. And of course, if you feel you're in the throes of addiction, whether you acknowledge it or not, you feel like you're powerless.
Oh, yeah,
Over that.
absolutely.
And so much of what you talk about monopolies, not just on the food supply or drugs or treatment, money, all of these systems have been set up to disempower us. And in that case, drive us into dependency. Some go into full-on addiction. Others just go, I'll just, when they say jump, I'll say how high, right?
Yeah.
Versus, man, my connection to spirit and God tells me that's not the right thing to do. But all of the peer pressure is to push you to do the thing that is destructive to you and others. Under the guise of, well, you're really being a good citizen.
Yeah, good citizen. We talk about, even like in the school systems, about bullying, which I'm definitely a fan of getting rid of this bullying stuff because it's driving a lot of kids to suicide and a lot of different things. But yet our own government's frickin' doing the same to us.
Really though?
They're bullying us. It's like, I'm the big guy and you're going to do exactly what I tell you. And
And I'm going to take all your money.
and I'm going to take all your money and I'm going to
dollar you
have the power. And I wanted to go somewhere else too. And you go back to the days, even like Robert, when you were talking about before really modern medicine and all that started taking off and the science behind things.
Yeah.
I mean, the Native Americans, man, they knew all these plants and herbs and different things. They lived off the land and they cured a lot of their things that was going on just off of that. And then science has come in, and like you said, we take all the molecules of things that we need in our body, and we break it down. Then we add all this synthetic bullshit to it.
The weeds in our grass.
The weeds in our grass, basically,
Which
put,
are medicine. I mean, you think about
Yeah.
every spring they say, here, buy this Roundup and kill the dandelions. The dandelions are like God's medicine for the liver and the kidneys to detoxify your body.
Yeah.
And we poison them off the planet.
Yep.
Meantime, we're only poisoning ourselves in the process. And I think about how many people that are maybe consider themselves, they love the earth, they're environmentally friendly, and you look and they're still spraying this toxic poison, cancerous crap on everything that the body needs and that nature provides to heal us. You know, it's not just the Native Americans. I mean, if you read the Bible, they talk about the plants of creation, you know, all the herbs, they're there for our benefit. And yet so many who claim to be, good God-fearing people, they're running to their doctor at the slightest symptom of something, or sending their kids in to get injections and poison. And I thought there's some cognitive dissonance here.
I'm looked at as crazy right now because I'm becoming more natural just in what I eat and what I drink. And I mean, excluding today, I hate that I have it right here after we're talking about this.
That was a donut in your mouth, wasn't it?
I
when
know,
you
it totally was.
I was giving you crap
it
about it
wasn't
too.
a donut, but I mean, it may as well have been, honestly.
I was complaining you weren't bringing us any.
Yeah, I know, right?
But no, it's like even my closest family members, they call me crazy because I do the things I do to better who I am naturally, and other people, they just don't understand that, and it's looked at as crazy.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
I interviewed Dick Gregory before he died, a few years before he died. He was a very famous comedian, civil rights activist in the 20th century. There has been many documentaries about this man. I mean, he led the way for people like Richard Pryor long before there was a Richard Pryor in terms of comedy and coming out of that community. And he drank alcohol, he smoked cigarettes, and then he found health, he found nutrition, and he became an outspoken advocate for eating clean foods, going organic. He came up with the Bahama diet, whatever. And when I met him at the Health Freedom Expos, a few of them, I was just so enamored with his journey in the 20th century to get where he was. And he pointed this out. He said, you know what? When I was smoking cigarettes, like chain smoking cigarettes, nobody called me a cigarette nut. When I was drinking alcohol all the time, nobody called me an alcohol nut. When I started eating healthy food and I stopped drinking and stopped smoking, they all called me a health nut. What is that? That was like, how, they're calling you crazy. It's like, how have we twisted that trying to be healthy is nutty in a negative sense versus doing all the addictive things and all the regular things? That's like normal and that.
Yeah.
And so we've got it so backwards in terms of our value system that we inadvertently, through our own peer pressure networks, make fun of people who are trying to do better.
Yeah.
And even follow, whether they be biblical or Native American or ancient herbal traditions from Ayurveda or Chinese medicine back before communism, going back thousands of years. Or for me, switching from modern allopathic medicine to homeopathic medicine when I was 24 years of age, and undoing talk about the hypoglycemia I experienced by utilizing remedies like lycopodium, which is the club moss, and iris, the beautiful flower, in homeopathic forms that could counteract these aberrant metabolic patterns that I had in my body. And then again, learning about the minerals, we talked about chromium and vanadium. And I think it's important for the audience to understand that it's not just a synthetic form of these minerals, because there's a lot of that happens. You go in the health food store and you read a label and you're like, oh, it says chromium, but it's bound to picolinic acid, which, unless you know cellular metabolism, you're like, I don't know what picolinic acid is. But it's basically cellular poop.
Oh,
basically,
really?
Yeah, it's a waste product of cellular metabolism. So when your cell is done, it throws out, just like humans, we throw out garbage.
Yeah.
And so modern man in his arrogance says, oh, I can do better than the natural form. I'll bind this chromium mineral to picolinic acid. We'll call it chromium picolinate. We'll get a patent on it, and we'll sell it back to the people, and we'll say, here's your chromium. And it's an artificial way to do it. And of course, maybe there's a little benefit. You find a little bit, but for the most part, it's at best wasteful in terms of your efforts. At worst, it actually could harm. And so we got to be careful about reading labels and understanding origin, how these things are developed. And that's part of what I do on my show for just my 23rd year broadcasting. Back before there were podcasts, it was called radio, which we still do. But it's 23 years in, I've been trying to educate my fellow Americans, and now people around the world, because of course podcasting has gone global in that sense, about the difference, the distinction, so we can be better about either if we're going in to buy something or ordering online, or if we're doing better in choices of food, recognizing which foods contain the minerals as they're designed to, so we can focus more there. On my show, I talk about that. One of the sources I recommend for people that are like interested in going, hey, I'd like to try that. On my website, robertscottbell.com, there's banners of things that I actually use, and I say, hey, go there if you want to get the stuff that I use, so you know you're getting the right stuff, or research it yourself. One of the sites is choosetobehealthy.com, which carries primarily only the whole food form, not Whole Foods the brand, but the whole food form of these things that are as it exists in nature, as opposed to man pretending to synthesize it, pretend, right? Mm-hmm. So that's part of the journey, and that's why I wrote the book Unlock the Power to Heal with my buddy Ty Bollinger, to kind of give some of those insights, kind of a simple handbook or guidebook to go, here are the basics we didn't get or we just overlooked. Start here, and we can start breaking the cycle, at least from a physiological perspective, whether it be addiction or other health challenges that we all face. So that's an ongoing discussion, never ends. People say, well, if everybody did what you said, you wouldn't have a show. I'm like, no, there's always something to talk about.
Oh, yeah.
That it never ends. People's journeys are always going to be there. But I really want to bring that power to heal back where it belongs with each and every one of you, like it was brought to me when I realized this. And, that's how we can break the cycle of addiction, much less other chronic afflictions.
Yeah. I love this conversation.
I know, I've got goosebumps.
Yeah, it is
right
really
up my
good
alley.
stuff. And we're going to take a quick commercial break right now. But when we come back to, I want to go towards just at the start of it, how you were talking about your comedian friend is when he was smoking and drinking alcohol, no one said anything. And as soon as he becomes a health nut, all of a sudden he's a weirdo. And I find that as well, since I have put myself in the addiction world. Okay. Anyway, we'll just wait till we come back. Guys, stay with us. We'll be right back.
Have you ever been in a car accident? Do you know what to do after being in a car accident? Are the insurance companies going to take care of you? Hi, I'm attorney Rick Heaton with the Law Office of Bobby Udall. I will help you through the process and answer all of these questions. I give every single client my cell phone so they can talk to me whenever they need. Let me deal with the insurance company so you can focus on getting better from your injuries. Call me at 385-330-0226. Again, my cell phone number, 385-330-0226. Don't call the insurance company first. Call attorney Rick Heaton at 385-330-0226.
Hello, my friends. This is Brad Neufeld, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the Resilience Talk Network. You can listen to my show, Resilience, every morning, Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. On my show, we will be discussing what it takes for you to overcome the day-to-day challenges that all of us face in life, as well as some of the devastating ones that may lead us to feelings of hopelessness and despair. It's my goal to provide you with the tools and skills that you need to overcome anything that is thrown your way. To find out more about my show, visit our website at www.resiliencetalk.com. That's www.resiliencetalk.com. And as always, until we meet again, go for everything that you want in life and make it happen.
Good morning, this is Leticia with Computer Hospital. We are your computer repair experts for both PC and Mac. We are your community resource for all of your computer repair needs. What makes us different is that we want to fix your computer. We also do free diagnostics. We charge a flat rate labor, which means that you won't pay by the hour. All of our computer repair is done in-house with a fast turnaround time, and same-day service is also available. Feel free to stop by anytime without an appointment. We're located in Sandy at 8721 South State Street. Again, that's 8721 South State Street, or call us at 801-987-3993. Again, that's 801-987-3993. This is Leticia with Computer Hospital, and we look forward to seeing you soon.
Hello there, this is Brad Neufeld with the Resilience Talk Network, and I would like to introduce to you Taffy Town, one of our newest sponsors. Let me introduce you to Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek from Taffy Town. We're proud sponsors of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. Taffy Town is a family-owned and operated business still operating in the Salt Lake City area for over 100 years. We manufacture some of America's best saltwater taffy.
What makes Taffy Town stand out from all of the others?
We have a unique recipe, a whip-style recipe that incorporates egg whites, evaporated milk, real sea salt. It's a unique product that is flavorful, melts in your mouth, and the best part is we probably have a flavor for anyone's liking, a flavor for any reason, for any season. We have unique flavors like chicken and waffles, maple bacon, frosted cupcake. New this year was a pineapple ghost pepper flavor.
That's awesome. Where can people find out more about Taffy Town and all of its products?
You can check all of this stuff out. All of our products are available for sale on taffytown.com. We ship for free from our website, so all of our pricing on there is shipping included. Oftentimes we offer special promotions and discounts to our loyal customers, so do be sure to sign up for an account, and we look forward to seeing what we can do to make you smile with our taffy.
Where are you located?
We are currently located at 9813 South Prosperity Road in West Jordan, Utah, just at the foothills of the Copper Canyon mine.
Derek, taffy has always been a great gift to give. What are some of the creative ways Taffy Town can help say thank you to others?
Yeah, if you're looking for gift ideas, whether to say thank you to friends or family, or maybe to your clients after such a difficult or successful year that you've had, you could look no further than to get a gift idea from taffytown.com. We offer pre-packaged gift boxes that say that it's saltwater taffy from the city of the Great Salt Lake, and it tells a little bit about the history of our community and making candy for so long. You can also do customized gifts to pick out just the right flavors or colors of candy for that special someone and deliver even a personalized message in that box to them. So please feel free to check out taffytown.com for any gift ideas this season.
Thank you so much, Derek. Please visit taffytown.com, that's taffytown.com, to find out more about the products and services that Taffy Town offers. You won't be disappointed.
Do you know someone who's gambling with death due to an addiction? Do you know someone whose life is being turned upside down due to a loved one that's battling with addiction? Hi, I'm Al Richards. I am the host of the Other Side of Addiction podcast. I started the podcast due to my wife's battle with alcohol. Let's just say I became addicted to her addiction. Our podcast is helping people understand a little more about those who have battled addiction and those who are hurting from their addiction. Through raw vulnerability, we share stories that help uncover the root causes of addiction. Shame felt on both sides, matter of the conscious and subconscious mind, continued beliefs, and often confusing paths of recovery. We collaborate with real people and their stories, as well as licensed professionals, to help our audience gain a better understanding of addiction. You can find us on Resilience Talk Network. You can also find us on Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. That's Facebook at Mr. Al Richards. You can also find us on YouTube. Just look up the Other Side of Addiction podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Other Side of Addiction. We are here with our special guest, Robert Scott Bell. Again, Robert, thank you so much for being here. And Mel, thank you again for being here. Man, the first half of this show had some really, really good information. And
It's all downhill from here.
Oh, it's all downhill from here, yeah. And I know our listeners are going to get educated on this stuff. And again, you guys, if you want to learn more about what Robert does, go to his show, the Robert Scott Bell Show. Check it out. I didn't even hear of you until I was speaking with Laban. And he's like, hell, mate, he's in your area. I'm like, what? Are you serious?
Best kept secret in health talk media, you know.
Yeah.
You don't find me until you're ready, because I don't pull back on things that actually will help you. And you know, there's a lot invested in keeping people from that information. We know that. Long before there was censorship. You know, I've been banned on YouTube and even Spotify. Joe Rogan is allowed on Spotify. I'm not. So to let you know, they really think that what I'm saying is something you shouldn't hear.
Yeah.
So you can actually text my initials RSB to 22828 to get part of the newsletter, so you get the updates. RSB, text RSB to 22828, and you'll plug in. We'll keep you informed. Upcoming events and things, because I travel around the country, sometimes around the world, and there's local events that happen as well. So wherever you are, you want to stay plugged in, because you know, I am invested in bringing the power to heal back where it belongs, and it's changed my life for the better, and I love lighting people up with their own power. I don't give it to them. I just remind them of their connection. And I said, you know, as a healer, any doctor, I believe this is true, even though most don't recognize it. My role is not to heal you, not to do it for you. It's to connect you to the source of all healing, which is ultimately your divinity, your connection to the divine. That gives you the guidance, gets you plugged in, and connects you to that which you're finally ready to receive. And until we're ready to receive it, you may not even know it exists.
Yeah.
And a lot of times the addiction route drives a wedge between us and our divine, you know, potential, much less our origin point. And we are seeking it. I think even in addiction, we are truly seeking that divine connection, but we're displaced and misplaced in what we're using instead of what we could or should be. But again, we come back to what we opened with today, talking about at least we can address the physiological realities of our bodies. If we can take that part of it out of the equation significantly, then we are better able to deal with the emotional and mental and even spiritual things, because that's not I got this craving I can't overcome to get it to those other areas.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's how they want us to be. I mean, they want us to be confused. They want us to be addicted. They want our minds messed up. Yeah. Because when you're so confused, you don't know which direction to go. That's when they got a hold of you.
Yeah.
You know, and I am one who I do not like prescription drugs, period, at all. And we've talked about this on another show one time before, and someone that we had in the audience when we went on our commercial break, they got a little upset with me on it. And I says, look, there may be some things that we need, okay, for certain things. I'm not saying that they're all bad. What I'm saying is there is way, way too much of it. And we have people on our show who have battled all types of drug addiction. I mean, opioids, heroin, meth, cocaine, I mean, alcohol. And it's kind of like what your friend was saying earlier, your comedian, about how they made fun of him once he become a health nut. Well, society, we have this stigma that people that are addicted to those type of drugs and the alcohol, even though alcohol's promoted like it's a fantastic thing, you got to have it to have a good time, right, during the holidays and birthdays and all this other stuff.
You can't watch any show.
You can't watch any show without alcohol, and it's bad. You know, it's a bad thing. But it's okay that I take a handful of prescription drugs. Why is it okay? Because my doctor said it was okay. Now, I have a family member who is probably, I bet you I could list in 2 rows on this piece of paper right here. And she's constantly still having more health issues.
So she's on a lot of medication.
She's on a lot of medication. Yeah. And I keep saying, you got to get off of these, because this is causing, I don't know if it is, because I'm not a physician or a scientist or any of that, but your side effects is probably happening because of this, or this, or this, or that, or
how many of those drugs is she on have been tested together?
Yeah, who knows? Because that's another thing. That's another thing is, and there is a company out there now, I think, that they can test to make sure that if you're taking different drugs that it won't react, because a lot of people were dying because there was
some are more obvious than others, but
the
ones they don't recognize or acknowledge are creating compounded toxicity, metabolic dysfunction, etc. And modern medicine, and all of its trappings, FDA-approved pharmaceutical drugs, considered the third leading cause of death in America annually.
Yeah.
That's not me saying it. That's coming from the Journal of the American Medical Association, the New England Journal of Medicine, the Lancet out of the UK. This is not unknown. But we kind of look over it. As I point out that between 106,000 to 784,000 Americans die every year due to properly prescribed, administered, and ingested drugs. That's a pandemic beyond any pandemic, including
Absolutely.
COVID. And yet that's like, well, that part's okay. That kind of death is okay because it's been approved by the government, by the FDA. Big pharma makes big money from it. So overlook that. Even SSRI drugs, these are, the psychiatric medications, the selective serotonin reuptake inhibiting drugs like Prozac, Paxil, Zoloft, are responsible, according to some stats, 500,000 deaths a year around the world. And yes, somebody will say, well, it helped me. Right. Look, I'm not disputing the one case where you feel like you've benefited by it, but you recognize if you titrate up or down, that's where you see homicidal, suicidal behaviors manifest beyond just thoughts that become very dangerous as well.
Yeah.
And those drugs, let's just say the appropriate way to use a drug would be an acute intervention to save a life. A couple of days to a couple of weeks and then get them off of it. Mm-hmm. That's not the way they survive as an industry. By putting you on a drug for life, then they survive and thrive and profit.
Yeah.
There is no such thing as a drug deficiency disease. Doesn't exist. But there are mineral, vitamin, essential fat, protein, all these deficiencies do exist. And we can counteract them in a safe way without addiction, without death. And yet we have come to worship doctors as if they're the priestcraft and the church of pharmaceutical mysticism. It's a false religion. It's a dangerous death cult. Yes, arguably can save lives in an acute response scenario like wartime medicine to patch you up and get you back on the battlefield. They are amazing for that. But when you apply those methods to all of these things we're talking about, including chronic addiction, it's more devastating than it is helpful.
Yeah. I would have to agree. The more that I'm learning,
Absolutely.
I've known
that for a while, and I'm not for it.
Yeah. Well, and it's like Robert said, and even with his show, it's you just mentioned it at the beginning of the second half here is you can't make anybody do anything. You're out there, you're educating them. Just like I tried for years to, and my wife doesn't like this word, but it's the only word I've been able to come up with, is fix my wife, get her recovered. It didn't matter what I did. If she didn't want it, it wasn't going to happen. Once she decided she was done and through with it, that's when things changed. And I really do believe that we all need to start opening our eyes a little bit more and seeing what's out there. Because, again, we have been conditioned ever since we've been young children. And some through our parents, and it's not any fault of their own. They're doing what they thought would be best for us, and they learned from their parents and so on and so forth. But we really need to start opening our eyes and start going, there's a better way out there. Because before all this modern medicine and all this stuff started happening, I mean, there were, addictions, back in the 1800s and earlier in that. Yeah. However, the addiction has grown so much, and I believe it's because we're walking around with our blinders on. We're not looking at things the way they definitely need to be looked at, and we do have to become a healthier society. I mean, we really do, because when you start feeding your body with the right nutrients, how it changes. Because I mean, we were talking about carbs and stuff earlier, and I'm not one for yams. And when I was getting ready for competition, you had to have a yam like every day, and I gave it my best shot, and I'm like, I just cannot handle this mushy crap in my mouth. It just doesn't.
I'll have yours. I like them.
It just doesn't work for me, And so I cut things out, and I started realizing I couldn't concentrate at work, and I'm over maintenance, production, and when you're around high-speed machines, you need to be paying attention to what's going on. And I just couldn't. I was getting very irritated and frustrated with things, and I was talking to my trainer, and he says, well, what's your diet like? And I started telling him, and he's like, where's your carbs? I says, I cut them out. And he goes, you don't want to do the yams. I'm like, I just cannot stand them. I just don't want them. And he's like, well, throw a frickin' baked potato in there because you got to have something. And once I started eating one a day, I started leveling back out. And again, I didn't realize that certain foods could change how your mind works until you even started talking about how a lot of these recovery centers, I mean, I don't know, would you be interested in writing a book for like meals on what to serve for recovery centers and give it to recovery
there are a
centers?
lot of good nutrition books on addiction. In fact, The Diet Cure and the Mood Cure by Julia Ross. I recommend those two books. They talk about specific amino acid therapies that can be done in conjunction with different personality body types and how it's manifesting in terms of addiction, depression, etc. I think those are good resources.
You said The Diet Cure
and
the
Mood Cure, two books and I've interviewed her many years ago now. I've interviewed almost 1,600 people over the last 2,300 years.
Yeah.
It feels like it sometimes.
You look great for your age,
Thanks
Robert.
very much. Let's see what good eating can do.
Yes.
But yeah, the idea here is, of course, to learn from a lot of people. I don't claim to. I certainly don't have all knowledge. I've learned a lot, and people do look to me and go, "Hey, you're pretty smart." But they never see all the research you've done, all that you've gone through. By the time they meet you, and they're like, "Oh man, I wish I could know that." Well, it takes some time and research and putting it into practice. But finding out how people live as well, because there are a lot of people that say things, and then you look at the way they eat or live, and you're like, just a little bit hypocritical, and you might have questions about what they're saying.
It's just water.
It's also a transition process. We don't often get there like that, but the idea here is if we learn the basics, like with B vitamins, complexes, these are water soluble primarily, and we see a lot with addiction to alcohol, dropping certain vitamins out of the body, and how supplementing them can also affect our ability to navigate that. So, even as I focused before, we talked about chromium and vanadium. It's not one thing, although there are certain keys that if we hit one thing, it can make a huge difference. And I say that's not the end point, but that can lead us to the next level of understanding and what else am I lacking. So even a book like that doesn't cover everything, but my gosh, it fills in some very critical gaps that people thought, I never even tried that, knew that, tried it, and like, that really helped.
Yeah.
Is it the end? No, it's still part of the journey that we're on. But if we overlook that.
There is no finish line.
Yeah.
There is no finish line.
And that can be daunting and depressing for some. For me, it's exciting because there's always more to learn, and I've just engaged in this process of, it's an extraordinary journey. And the things I don't know are as exciting to me as the things I know, so that it keeps driving me to learn. And we talk about you get kids in school. I remember being in school, and I didn't particularly care for it, probably because what we were being taught didn't resonate with me. A lot of it was just outright nonsense, or in terms of history, dates, times, and places with no causal connection. And so this is part of the process of training kids to be compliant adults.
Yep.
When you don't connect cause and effect in people's lives, they can be controlled and manipulated by people who understand cause and effect.
Yep.
But you don't know. They know, and you're like, well, they're the experts, so you take care of me. You go, I can't do it. Or the doctors, which don't learn cause and effect in reality either, in terms of real cause of disease and how to correct it. Then now what we're seeing in schools is so much worse than everything I experienced in public school when I was a kid, when we were younger. Yes. Now it's just like insane what's being taught. So
it is.
If you can get your kids out of that environment, or if you can't, then you have to deprogram them every day when they get back home, or else you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, by design as well.
Well, I think, wasn't Napoleon Hill that wrote the book Think and Grow Rich? I remember reading a paragraph in there where he was even talking about school. And he says, we're teaching our kids the wrong thing. Now, this was back in the 1930s. Mm-hmm. Flipping 1930s. He's like, we're teaching them the wrong things. And he even mentioned something about college. He's like, college is the biggest legal scam there is out there. And he's like, it's money that's coming in, and it's feeding them.
We're teaching them to be workers, not thinkers.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
Yeah. And I even said I was a terrible student as well.
I was too.
After about 15 minutes sitting in the classroom, I'm like, I just want to leave.
You were smarter than the
here.
teachers on one level. And that's where it's struggle, when you have kids that you're sending to schools and they're like, they don't fit into that box. and then they're kind of labeled with they're somehow dysfunctional, they're disruptive, and it's like I don't want these kids to wear that label. I want them to understand that they are connected to a far higher source of wisdom by their very existence.
It made me feel like I was stupid.
Yeah.
Like I know I'm very smart, but when it comes to school, it's something I had to detrain myself in my 20s to understand that I'm not stupid. It's not my learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and these kids are here, I believe, to transform this place positively.
I do too.
And yet they're trying to conform them so that can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I would argue, if I talk about some of the things I know, we will get banned on YouTube again. I don't want to get you guys banned on YouTube, but let's just say the carrot sticks that they put in the arms of children are, and it was particularly in the 90s when that first happened, really took a lot of bright, spiritually engaged and lit up kids and took them out of the ability to fulfill their mission other than to warn us about what we did by turning our bodies over to mad scientists and doctors. So that I'll say it neutral that way so we won't get banned.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm
Keep
sure
your kids away from
I'm sure Brad would like that too. Yeah, it's just crazy how, I don't know, how society has gone and just how we look at things and how long we've actually been brainwashed on so many things. And I was getting ready to say earlier that if I would have known now what I know, if I would have known then what I know now,
Right.
And I don't blame my parents for it. They were brought up a certain way, and this is how I was brought up, and that's how I looked at life, and this is how I thought I was supposed to go. And in all honesty, I'm just going to say it, in all honesty, if it wasn't for me losing my job in 2009 and my wife going through her addiction, I would probably still be back there, way back there, because it really started opening my eyes up. In 2009, I decided I was going to figure out who I was as a person. Even though I thought I was a good person, I still felt like there was something missing that I wasn't for sure what it was. And I started educating myself a little bit more on law of attraction and different things. And I started also kind of pulling out, even though I had pulled my religion out and wasn't a part of it for a long time, I wanted to bring something in. And for some reason, something inside of me kept telling me it wasn't the religion. It was spiritual, but it wasn't religion. Yeah. And watching my wife go through her battle with her addiction and just watching the pain and the suffering that she went through, that all of us went through, family members, and I went through the depths of it with her tooth and toenail because I was with her all the time. And just seeing how life is, and again, we talked about at the beginning of the show, the people that I've met. I've shared this on a podcast many times that I went to an AA meeting with my wife, and this guy gets up and gets his 10 or 15 year chip, and he gets up and he goes, I just want to say I'm grateful to God for making me an alcoholic. Yeah. And I remember leaning over to my wife and going, that guy is effing nuts. But as he started going, I started realizing why. And you've mentioned it a couple times during the show, Robert, the spiritual part of things, of there's something greater that's out there, that's greater than all of us. And it's here for us. It's here. Why are we not taking it? And it's because we're being molded from something outside.
To the heart of that statement by that man at the AA meeting, which is a shocker. It's like, what are you talking about? I really gravitate toward that because there's gratitude, for instance. This G word is important. Having gratitude for even the things that are the worst in life. And I've come to the conclusion that God loves me enough to allow me to make the most horrific mistakes.
Yeah.
That allow me to come back to God by choice, not by coercion, deception, or fear of damnation, etc., but because I choose to do it. And many of us can't get there until we've gone to the bottom of the barrel, so to speak, or had horrific experiences that we might even curse God along the way. God's big enough to handle it. That's not a problem for God. It's like, the love that however people perceive God is so extraordinary. It's so much more than we can conceive of that we would be allowed to make choices that seemingly are devastating and brutal. Yet the things I've learned the greatest lessons from are the worst mistakes I've made.
Oh, yeah.
And many people will come to that conclusion. And then I come to that point where I choose to do what I do, not because I'm afraid of what would happen if I don't, but because I've learned truly what matters, what's important, and how to get there. And I think in terms of, I think we mentioned maybe sort of vibration or resonance, the energies, if you will. What draws the good things into our life versus that which, when we're in that sad, addictive state, drawing all the bad stuff into our lives, law of attraction kind of stuff. And, I realized going back to my religious roots in Judaism, being bar mitzvah and singing in Hebrew and chanting all the sacred words. And I was always intrigued by that, even though it's hard to learn Hebrew. I complain. But, since that time, in terms of my spiritual understanding about vibration, as a homeopath, vibration is everything. We utilize a remedy to alter vibration in our bodies to correct what has gone off, so to speak. So it makes sense to me, even intellectually. But spiritually, what are the things that we can do to bring that, what we desire, if we call it positive, or love, back into our lives where we felt a void? And I think that we've overlooked in the West the utilization of sound in healing.
Oh, yeah.
Singing, chanting, praying, and vibration.
I just got my first sound bowl over the weekend.
Oh, very nice,
awesome.
Right? And it's quite extraordinary how that can fill in some of those voids I've talked about in terms of minerals, but also sound and how it can heal. There are many sacred words people can chant or sing. If you're Christian, singing Christ or Jesus or having that image is going to be uplifting to you. Mm-hmm. But for people that maybe don't have a path, but they feel that call to spirit, whatever that is, there are things you've heard in the Eastern world like Om, which has a vibration that people use. I found this word Hu, H-U, which is human, Hu, man, mm-hmm. God. It's an ancient and sacred name for God. And that word has a special vibration that kind of breaks through all of the limitations. And I found it opens me up to that love and divine direction, if you will, when all the other stuff is kind of getting in the way. And I would sing Hugh. I could do it silently or out loud. As a practice, in my spiritual practices, you can do it as a contemplation, a meditation, or in a prayerful session. It doesn't belong to any one religion. It's just a sound, right?
Yeah, just a sound, yeah.
And it's just opened me up to guidance that I wasn't opened up to before. And if you resonate with it, or if you want to try it, it's very simple, just Hugh. And I've found people that said, my gosh, I just did that. We talk about changing our bodies by minerals, changing the sounds that come in and that you utilize, opening yourself up to guidance that is, I believe, always here. Uh-huh. All the time we're trying to, the messages are trying to come through and we are not listening. Mm-hmm. We're distracted or we're toxic or on and on it goes. And so from a simple practical sense, I'm a pragmatic guy. I want to try stuff that I can put to the test. That was something that opened me up and changed my life. That opened me up for the years that I was seeking healing physically. By doing that, it opened me up to accept and receive the gifts that I would have rejected because of my mental constructs and programming. So it helped me to get beyond that. So I think that's kind of a nice tip. And I shared that with Laban on his podcast as well, because again, we share what we learn, and maybe it helps someone else too.
Well, and if it just helps one person, Robert, mm-hmm. in my eyes, what we've gone through made a difference, right? Even if it's just one person, because that one person may help two people or three people, or maybe it's only another one person, but that snowball still, it gets bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm. The sound healing, that's actually resonated with me really strongly, and I think that's what also helped open me up to where I'm at today. It's like going through my last marriage, it was the frequency therapies that I'd have on my desktop at work at a job I hated, but I'd have it just loud enough to where I could hear it, the person behind me could hear it, but nobody's complaining about it, but I would listen to that every day. Mm-hmm. Every day. And it's really opened me up to so many things over the years. Yeah.
It's good stuff. And I'm glad that Robert brought that up, because I have some stuff downloaded on my iTunes. It's brainwave entrainment. Yeah. And when I started doing meditation a long time ago, it would really help me. I'd plug the headphones in and put the computer close and lay down on the couch and just listen to it to help get me grounded again, and it's amazing what it does. And even like what you said with the bowls, I had some of the Tibetan bowl stuff, and
oh my gosh,
I tell you what, every time I have that, I smell incense every single time.
I got a Hue app. right?
Oh,
my
so you
gosh.
can actually experience
the Hue
that.
app.
Yeah, there's a Hue app, Experience the God Sound. Hue, H-U. You can see that in the camera. I'm holding it up. And you can listen to it, play it in the car. You know, it's like you're doing, like at work. And you can... And it's just like, takes you into this space of like, oh my gosh. And out of all the stuff that kind of gets in the way. So whatever works for you, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
see that? There you go.
Yeah,
That's a good thing
I
to
love
share.
that.
So I love that. And that's where I think technology has been okay. You know, it's not all bad, right? There's nothing that's all bad or all good. But utilizing these things for our benefit as opposed to destructive ends. And unfortunately, a lot of times when we are so advanced mentally, scientifically, but we lack the connection to the divine, that's where we get into trouble. Because then there's no limitation on our behavior. If it harms somebody, we don't care. It's only about mental construct science, right?
Yeah.
And I think getting back to the heart of it, and I recognize there are people with all kinds of beliefs or don't have any. And how do we communicate with them? Oftentimes, if we only perceive it in a way we perceive it and say, you must perceive it like I perceive it, that becomes destructive of our ends to try and help people. It's like, look, I don't know what they need per se. I know certain things from a dietary mineral perspective we'll all benefit by, but there are unique things in our journey, I believe, back here, back to God, that defy a dogma. Despite a lot of people want to, say, well, this is the only way. I think, the way that you find is the way. And you find, for me, a litmus is how much love do I have in my life? I think as we talk about, are you wealthy? Do you have money? And that's a very limited construct in terms of how many people with a lot of money are miserable. That's really not the issue.
Well, and there's different ways to look at wealth.
I look at wealth just,
exactly.
I'm wealthy just in the fact that my kids are happy.
Yeah.
We have a fantastic home.
Yeah.
That's wealth to me.
Right.
And the reason why I say, and I hope I'm not interrupting you,
No,
Robert.
by all means, this was a great
and
discussion.
the reason why I touched on that is years ago I had a buddy who I met through networking. His name's Oz, not the Wizard of Oz, but literally his name is Oz.
Yeah.
And he reached out to me one day, calls me, and he goes, "Hey, what's going on? What you been up to?" And he goes, "Man, we haven't seen each other for a while." And he says, "You down for like an hour meeting or something?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's hook up and let's catch up a little bit." And so we schedule a meeting at Topgolf, not to go play golf. We just sat in their restaurant, and we went in and we sat down and we were having some powerful conversation. Oz is very, very intelligent, very smart man, looks at life the way a lot of us should be looking at life. And he asked me a question. He goes, "Can I ask you a question?" And he goes, "And you don't have to answer it if you don't want to, or you could just say it's none of my business." But he goes, "Are you wealthy, Al?" And I leaned back in my chair and I'm laughing. I says, "Man, if I showed you my checking account right now, you'd see that I'm not, and I'm just kind of joking about it, And he goes, "Let me tell you something." He goes, "You and I have done a lot of networking." And he goes, "Whenever I go to a networking group," he goes, "it seems like your name is brought up." And he says, no one has ever spoken ill word about you." And he leans over and he puts his hands on top of mine and he goes, "My friend, you are extremely wealthy." And it just, I get goosebumps right now. I'm like, oh my freaking hell, I never thought of it that way. So he just taught me something.
That's profound.
With that, and I'm going, that makes me feel good because all this work that I've been doing has been paying off. Because I had best friends that when I lost my job, a lot of them came up, well, not a lot of them, a few of them came up and said, "We never trusted you." And I'm like, "I never stole from you or, was any mean?" And they're like, "Well, we just really didn't trust what you'd say or anything." And so my integrity wasn't there. And I realized I needed to have some integrity. And that really, really made me feel good. He freaking brought tears to my eyes when he said that. And I was just like, holy crap. And you said it here during the show, Robert, about we all have our own journey and sometimes we have to go through those bad things. I lose my job of 24 years. I remember I hit my knees for the first time in I don't know how freaking long. And I was embarrassed even doing it. I'm not ashamed to say it. I was embarrassed to hit my knees and say, "God, why is this happening?" That was the beginning of this journey that now I've been on how many years later.
In addition to the wealth question, that was a brilliant little lesson that your friend taught you. I like that. Hopefully
Yeah.
meet him
Yeah.
one day. Question about abundance comes to mind. What is abundance? We
Yeah.
often think of it in terms of material values and things, but I believe abundance is having everything you need exactly when you need it.
Yeah.
Access to it,
like
maybe.
that.
If not having it, then access to it.
Mm-hmm.
And how does that manifest? Being open to it, being willing to receive it. As we talk about, we seem to be in agreement that I think the gifts and the communication are always around us, trying to permeate and penetrate us.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
the ones that are our own, some would say, worst enemies, or our obstacle to whatever it is. Our belief systems. It's like if wealth is defined by what's in the bank, you're never going to have it enough.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
we
you're
talked
not.
about monetary system as well. If abundance is having access to the the ability to create or co-create at any moment what you need in that moment you most need it, then tapping into who we really are. Once again, I come back to our divinity. People define it differently. It means that there isn't an issue about what you have or don't have in a bank account or under a mattress somewhere. It's the immediate access to the spiritual essence of our very existence that can manifest anything we need at the moment we need it.
Yes.
And that it's not attachment to it either. It's recognizing that it doesn't own us or control us at the same time. Whereas the love of money, being the root of all evil, and that is, a kind of a deception, but one that we are allowed to go down so we learn what is truly valuable,
Yeah.
as opposed to what we have perceived it to be because of how we've been programmed, by the schools or other things or peer pressure, etc. So, this is the exciting part of the journey when we get to even have conversations like this that don't often happen.
Yeah.
That gives these aha moments to life and go, I resonate with that. Even if you don't fully understand it as a concept or a mental abstract, it's like, whoa, I feel it. And I think as much as people will operate on feelings or emotions, I'm not speaking necessarily about that. It's like, is it emotionally? This is something that's deeper than that resonates with your very being. And whether it's Marvel Comics universe spider sense, or whether it be considered a spiritual signal, it's different than just an emotion, which
Yeah.
is an important part of our journey as well. We have an emotional body to express and experience, and I'm not denying that. But oftentimes we're led by that, and that'll often lead us deeper into addiction as opposed to transcending it, if you will. So it's again a discussion that it doesn't solve the problem, but starting to recognize that there is a difference and go, oh, let me try and practice. What is that different in the feeling? So
Yeah.
it's like learning a new language.
Well, and when it comes to the mental stuff, and even like we started on the beginning of this show, is learning how to eat the right things, bring in the right nutrients for ourselves. It's amazing where life takes you. I mean, it really does. In recovery, they talk about you give your life over to a higher power, however you look at the higher power. It could be God, it could be the universe, it could be a mountain, it could be a rock. It doesn't matter, And I've had to learn how to do the same thing. I think we spend too much of our time, too much of our life where we miss those blessings that are around us on a daily basis. It's because we're too busy trying to control our own life. When we stop trying to control our own life and let life happen as it's happening, what's that saying? Life isn't happening to us, it's happening for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really, really frickin' is.
There, I got
But
the
it's
chills
not just
on
the
that
food.
I mean, it
either.
is, yeah.
It's
Yeah,
the sounds,
it's the
the
sounds,
words, it's everything,
it's everything.
around us.
Yeah. I mean, I had a buddy once, and we got to wrap this up because we got to respect Robert's time. I was doing some work with this gentleman, and he was telling me to start listening a little bit more of what my head's telling me. And he's like, you will have spirits that are talking to you constantly. And I went back a week later, and he's like, how's it going? And I'm like, man, I don't know, man. I'm more confused than I was before I even started. And he goes, well, tell me about it. And so I started telling him what my experience was. And I'm like, yeah, my head says this. And then I'm like, oh, my gosh, really? Because what if I do that? And then I don't know, because if I go this way. And I only lasted about 30 seconds. And he goes, let me stop you. And I'm like, all right, what? And he goes, you're still trying to control it. He says, spirit either say yes, no, go this way or not this way. Mm-hmm. Or they may say one little thing. And he says, you're questioning everything. He says, start letting it flow. Just listen. Mm-hmm. And as I've done this now throughout the years, I feel that I have drawn more closer to my spirit, which I believe is, there's a veil right here in front of me that I don't see, and just like that, it's blown away. So something's looking at me and helping me.
Absolutely, we have a lot of help.
You know, but we're not paying attention to it. It's because we're trying to control every aspect of our lives, and it doesn't work.
That was a big part of my journey to get to what you're describing. And, you know, as we mentioned the hue before, that's helped me. You know, the discipline of practicing spiritually and exercise, like we exercise physically, exercise the spirit, to get out of our own way. And all of those voices, it's a cacophony, you know, and how is it that we recognize that which is truly guiding us towards something that is uplifting and in abundance and unfolding in an extraordinarily powerful way versus that which would drive us to destruction? Because you hear about people in addiction having those voices telling them to do all the horrible things. So how do you differentiate? And that's part of the practice of discernment. And it may not come in a week or a day, but the practice over time. And then suddenly you're like the Jedi Master, right? In a sense.
Yeah.
I don't mean it from an ego sense.
Let's keep going.
But in a sense that you are always guided and you follow and you find that I've never been driven wrong when I listen to that, but it's practice. Because before you have that practice, you're not sure what you're hearing. And so that's sage advice and wisdom, so to speak, that we begin to apply. And however you all apply it, you know, the discipline and practice is important. Not just, at one time it happened, it was a miracle, as if that never happens again. Yeah. That miracle happens every moment.
Amen.
When we become aware of it, it becomes so exciting that you're always in that presence. Now, that's a difficult task, and I acknowledge I've fallen off of it from time to time because I'm human. While we're here, we have vulnerabilities. Yeah. But with practice, like anything, you get stronger, more resilient, and they're less able, whoever we consider the bad guys to be, to throw you off of your course, your mission, your passion, etc. So this may be daunting to some to say, well, you mean I have to be disciplined about it? Yeah, to some degree. If you want to achieve great success in any endeavor, practice. And people won't see all the years of practice when they come to you and say, Al, man, you're amazing. I wish I could do what you did. It's like, well, it starts somewhere. And, you know, on an ongoing basis, we put it into practice. It becomes us. So it's not a foreign concept. We are wearing it. It's inside of us. And part of the journey, again, is having conversations like this. And I encourage folks to get together when you can. Like this. I mean, we're here together. You guys are watching us on a distant platform. But if you have an opportunity to talk, listen. And listening is different than hearing words. It's like feeling their experience. And I would say taking great joy in their experience, which may be so radically different from your words. You might want to judge it immediately. Don't. Allow that experience to be there, because in that presence, you're giving them the greatest gift that they've been all searching for, like we all have, to be heard. And in that way, it's healing. It dissipates a lot of that energy that then drives those people or keeps them in an addicted state. And then you find some great joy in the most unusual of places. And, you know, the healer that you are becomes more apparent. You don't have to have a doctorate, you know, by being present, by being alive, by recognizing your divinity, by your very presence. Whether you speak or don't, you are a healing presence in people's lives. And so I say, get together with them. If you hug, give them a hug, because we need more of that.
Oh yeah, I love hugs. I love it.
I am grateful to you both for hosting me here on this particular discussion. I hope everybody's enjoyed a little bit of it. I've certainly been.
Oh my gosh, I have.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, Robert, thank you so much. I mean, I wish you didn't have a show to hurry and get to, because I probably could have spent another hour here with you.
We can do a part two another time.
Yeah, we should do that.
Definitely.
Or wait a minute, that's a word I'm working on. Let's do that.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, I'm working on getting that don't shit on me word out of my vocabulary. So anyway, Robert, before we hurry and sign off, again, how can people find you?
Yeah, just come to robertscottbell.com. You can text RSB to 22828 to become part of our newsletter audience, so you're always plugged in. I'm on the air 1 to 3 or so Mountain Time every day, Monday through Friday. I have a Sunday radio broadcast that I pre-record. The others are live. Okay. But you can listen live or later. If you listen live, we have a live chat room, which is fun. A lot of people engage. It's a nice community. People love to help one another. It's sort of like it's a reflection of who you are, the people that come and join you each time. So that's nice. But just come on over to my website and let me know you heard about it through Al and the Other Side of Addiction, and Mel, and the things we've done here. You're all welcome to join me there for whatever little bit or a lot of bit that you enjoy and take from it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share like we have today.
Cool. Thank you. Well, guys, I highly recommend his show. I've since I had the honor of being a guest on his show, and I've been able to click on and watch some of his other ones. It is great stuff. Now, I'm sure Mel's got it written down. I know she's going to be a new fan. It's really,
Yes,
really good stuff. So
definitely.
again, I highly recommend checking out Robert's show.
And I can't promise you won't be offended from time to time.
Yeah.
But life, that's how it rolls. But it's not with ill intent or meanness. It's honestly, we have emotions, and sometimes we need to let them out. And that's healthy too.
Yes.
But not overly reacting, because you can tune into 1 minute of any show and go, man, that guy is horrible. Or another minute, and you're like, no, we're a mix of a lot of things. And I think I've grown to appreciate those distinctions and differences in beliefs and views, and the respect that if you have for one another in the journey, it makes life amazing,
Oh, yes,
as opposed
it
to
does.
the fear that's induced by the artificial divide, right? So
Yes.
coming together like this doesn't mean we all have to agree on everything, or sometimes even anything. But the appreciation for, man, God created you too? Yeah, me too. Yeah, there's a purpose. Let's find it, and let's get together and have a good
I
time.
like that.
Amen. I love it. Well, guys, you heard it here on the other side of addiction. Again, I just, before we sign off, thank you to all our sponsors, all our listeners, to Brad at Resilience Talk Network. Again, guys, we couldn't do this without all you guys and all your support. To all our great guest co-hosts that we have had on, all our amazing guests that we have had on, just want to say thank you. We love you guys. We're going to sign off as we do every week. Remember, addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.